Good afternoon, YouTube. Your man always George Page coming to you live on YouTube. Well, I saw this while I was doing a little surfing. This is a birthday of a guy who I've been a fan of since I can remember. He is one of the funniest men in on TV, screen. I mean, he is a man who's just he has a million faces, a million voices. He just one of those amazing actors, comedians. This is one Jim Carrey. Now, Jim Carrey is one of my favorite actors. I used to love him. I remember the first time I saw him was on A Living Color, actually. But I've seen some movies he's done during his career and TV shows he's also done. He's just one of those classic actors. I mean, his range is just amazing. He can do comedies, he can do dramas, he can do he can do serious stuff. I mean, he's just that great of an actor. He's just one of these great guys. Now, you know, if you know Jim Carrey, you know him from his movies like Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, Dumber and Dumber, um, you know, Bruce Almighty, The Truman Show. I mean, the list goes on and on. And like I said, TV shows like Living Color most definitely was one where he really got his start. He did a smart thing when his career was still kind of starting out. He was still doing Living Color, before he really started doing a few of his movies along the way. Now, if you know anything about Jim, Jim was born James Eugene Carey, January 17th, 1962, in Canada. He was born in around, I think, Toronto area. And Jim was, I think he was like maybe one of the youngest, next youngest out of, I think he was the oldest out of his three siblings. He had a he was, I think he was the youngest, and he had three other siblings. He had a brother and sister, and he was raised by his mother and his father. His mother, she was fresh and Irish, Scottish, whatever mixed together. His father was Roman Catholic. His name was Percy, and he really still Jim's love for comedy. His family supported his comedy. When he was like a teenager, he was already doing stand up. He was doing, he's like, his favorite shows were like, Carrey Burnett show. I used to watch Carrey Burnett show as a kid. He had a lot of impersonations. He, did like people like Clint Eastwood. I think Bruce Dern. I mean, he did a lot of. So, he spent his years in Scarborough, Ontario, part of which is part of Toronto, and he attended Roman Catholic Trinity School. Now, when he was like old enough, he went to and moved on to New York, where he started doing stand up. And he started his stand up career. He, from around about the good part of the late '70s to the '80s. And he did a lot of improv, impersonations, show. He did a lot of stuff. He worked at a club called Yuck Yucks. And he did anything he could do comedy. He eventually he worked hard, but like so many comedians struggling, he had some financial issues. Most of the time he moved and he had a home. But also he was also around he was got married around in the '80s, and he kept on working hard. And he did a lot of stand up. He catches break later on in his career. When he moved to Hollywood, and he started doing some comedy store. He worked at the comedy store. Also, he worked different other comedy stations, and he moved back to Canada for a while, and then he came back to L.A. and he was working on with the as the main role of the Duck Factory, which was a sitcom developed by NBC in '83. And he did a lot of impersonations. He was on Johnny Carson's show, also David Letterman. He kept kind of busy. He kept busy for a good while, and then he started his first foray into um, television was around, let's see, 19. He did Duck Factory in '83. He also was on other shows like he had a show called Rubber Face, where he did a show about Buffalo Bill, Duck Factory in '84, and also the Mike Hammer Murder Takes All. It was a television movie. Remember the Mike Hammer show? It was a popular show back then. And also he started his first movie, which was in 1983, which was Sex and Violence Family Hour. It was also all in good taste. And '84, his next movie was Finders Keepers. But one of his movies that people might recognize him was a movie called Once Bitten. It starred Lord Hutton, also the late Cleavon Little. He played this guy who was him and his friends were out. He met this woman who was a vampire who needed the blood of the virgin. And at the end of the movie, his girlfriend right here in the back, they took his virginity, and the old vampire, Hello Horton, who played the old vampire, got old and died. Then later on, he also played in the Peggy Sue Got Married. He was also that's a movie with starring Nick Cage. The Deadpool with Clint Eastwood, which is one of the Dirty Harry sequels. Earth Girls Are Easy, where he worked with Marlon Wayans. No, sorry, not Marlon. Sorry, Damian Wayans, and also Jeff Goldblum and Gina Davis. They played aliens who came to Earth looking for Earth Girls. High Strung, Itsy Bitsy, and by '94, he started his first movie, which is his first starring movie, which was Ace Ventura: Big Detective. But right at that time in the '90s, he was doing the series In Living Color, and he was part of the main cast, which the show was created by the Wayans brothers. Marlon, also Damien, and you had Tom Davidson, you had Kim Wayans, you had David Allen Greer, Kelly Caulfield, remember also there's so many actors that started that show. And I remember his characters he played. He played Venus de Milo, who was a female bodybuilder. I mean, I think a lot of female bodybuilders didn't like that, but it was a crazy kid. Also, one was notable was Fire Marshal Bill. He was just crazy. Like, wait, tell you something. Say, let me tell you something. That was just crazy. I used to love that. And then around that time, he got his first starring movie in '94, which was Ace Ventura: Pet Detective. And by that then, Legal Color was always on his way out. He was down there for a long time. I mean, he was good. He did a smart thing. He did a smart thing. He kept with the show, even when the Wayans brothers left the Living Color. He kept on with the show till the show ended, and when his movie career started really to take some speed. Then later on that same year, he got in the movie Mask with young Carmen Diaz. It was a great movie, The Mask, and also another classic, Dumb and Dumber with Jeff Daniels. That's who doesn't love Dumb and Dumber? I mean, especially around that time, it was just the stupidity thing was very popular, and that was my favorite show. That was my favorite movie. Then he starred in the first of the Batman movies by Joe Schumacher, which was Batman Forever, which had Val Kilmer taking the role as Batman, which was after Tim Burton left the series, and also Michael Keaton. So Val Kilmer came to do Batman along with Tommy Lee Jones as Two-Face, Harvey Dent, and also Nicole Kidman was in that movie. And then that same year he did Ace Ventura: Nature's Call. That's the part where he was inside of the fake rhinoceros and he comes out. And that part when he at the end where the Tom Davidson, who was in the movie also, he played the prince from the rival tribe, and he was gonna have sex with the princess in the movie. And then he comes out, he's mad, and he asks the other guy beside him, "What do you say? She's not a virgin." He said, "You can tell that." Chicago. That was so stupid. It was so stupid. It was a crazy movie. A lot of sexual innuendos in that movie, but it's a great movie. Also, he was in the movie Cable Guy with Matthew Broderick. It was a great movie. It's a little more darker, but it was really funny. Here in the South we call him Cable Man. They call him Cable Guy, depending on I mean, it was just a crazy movie. It's a funny movie. I liked it. Cable Guy. And also there was Liar Liar, which was just great. Remember the part in the he's on the elevator with the chick. He's calling her nice boobs, and if you watch the bloopers where he tells her like he want to punch her like punch her boobs like punching bags. It was just funny. It's just a great movie. And then also the Truman Show, where he played a man who was raised on television. He didn't know that he was an orphan. They took him and they started created a TV world around him. And that's the part where he says, if I don't see you, I'll say good afternoon, good evening, and good night. And that was so crazy. It's great. It was a little bit more of a drama, the more there's a comedy, but it was a pretty good movie. And then also he was in the movie Man in the Movie about the Man in the Moon about the late Andy Kaufman. Andy Kaufman was an actor, comedian. He also was famous for wrestling women in intergender matches. He also was Locke on the series Taxi. It was about him. Remember Andy died from I think it was cancer in around about the '80s. And then he was also the movie Me Myself Irene with him and Renee Zellweger. They were dated for a good while after that movie. But it was a really funny movie. It was just a crazy movie. Just one of these great movies. Also, he played the Grinch in How the Grinch Stole Christmas. I didn't like this movie. I grew up watching the old Dr. Zeus cartoon version, and I never really liked this movie. I think, I don't know. It was probably pretty. He did it because he wanted to do it, but I wasn't a big fan of this movie. And then there was the movie Majestic, and also he did Bruce Almighty, where he played a man who gained the powers of God. It was him and Morgan Freeman. There was also Jennifer Aniston. I mean, Steve Irwin. He was in that movie. Kerwin. It's a lot of great actors and comedians on there. Penny Marshall also. I think she directed that movie. I believe. I'm trying to remember, but it was a great movie, funny movie. Also, he did a movie in uh around about in 2004, Lemony Snicket's, which was the series of fortunate events. It was based on a book about three orphans whose parents died, and he was the uncle, and he was like a ex, uh, stage actor. He was already playing different characters, get out the kids because the kids had a lot of money. And then around about 2005, he did the movie Fun with Dick and Jane. Also, a movie called 2007, he did a movie called The Number 23, which was kind of more of a drama, scary movie where he was a detective, flashbacking, from murderers' minds, like that. It was I never watched that movie. I never got into it. I also did a movie, another Dr. Seuss movie, Horton Was the Who, where he voiced the voice of Horton, the elephant. And that was a pretty good movie. Then also did Yes Man. This is a Terrence Stamp from the Superman movie. He plays Zod. Kneel before me, son of Jor-El. And it was a guy who couldn't say no to anything. It was an alright movie. I think back then, I think he's kind of winning a little bit. Also, he did a movie called I Love. That same year, I Love Philip Morris about cigarettes. Also, he played the voice of Ebenezer Scrooge in the animated version of A Christmas Carol, and that was in 2009. In 2011, he did Mr. Popper's Penguins, and one of his best movies. Also, he did another movie with Steve Curry and the Incredible Burt Wonderstone. And he did a movie Kick-Ass where he played Colonel Stars and Stripes. Kick-Ass 2, which was a sequel from the first one, was based on a comic book. Was not, I think it was a Dark Horse comic book, I think, I'm trying to remember. I never really watched many of the Kick-Ass movies. And he did, that same year in 2013, he did Anchorman 2, The Legend Continues. Remember the movie with Ron Burgundy, starring, I know his name. How can I forget his name? It was funny. It was crazy. He was a Canadian, supposed to be part of a Canadian news network. And him and the other would say, sorry, sorry. They're fighting in the middle of the of the park against. I think it was Kanye was there, Will Smith. You had I think Ben Stiller, and I think Vince Vaughn came back because in the first movie they had that same fight, and then also had the ghosts of Abraham Lincoln, or was it Grant, and you also had a Minotaur. It was crazy. And then he came back in 2014 with a sequel, Dumb and Dumber 2, with him and Jeff Goldblum. I'm sorry, Jeff Goldblum, Lloyd, uh, uh, Jeff Daniels. And that was I didn't watch that one. I think it's been so long since the first one, and I think a sequel was like he did some other movies not as known like Bad Batch and also Dark Crimes, and he plays Dr. Robotnik in the 2020 Sonic the Hedgehog movie. And he's working on a sequel for Sonic the Hedgehog. Some say they had to reboot the Sonic because he didn't look right, because it looked kind of funny, so they reboot the whole movie, because of the animation. And his plans, that's going to be coming out this year, and also a possible Ace Ventura 2 movie, Ace Ventura 3, and also another Dr. Zeus movie. And and he just got great comic. Even he did a TV show called it was when that show. I'm trying to look up it here because I want to be say it's called Kidding. We played kind of like kind of like cross between Mister Rogers and I would say Jim Henson character we're dealing with a little slight with depression. It was I never watched the show. I heard about it, but I never watched it. And just also talk to him maybe coming to MCU playing the character Modoc. The living brain killing thing. It's in Marvel. He's a Marvel villain. He's part of I think was it what's that group? Not Hydra. I think he's part of Hydra, another group. And he's supposed to be the voice for Modoc for the MCU. And Jim's just that crazy character. He's a funny guy. He's always doing stunts. He's very political. Also, if you look at it, he's always doing crazy stuff. I remember he was it back in I think in the around 2090. He was at the MTV Movie Awards, and he won an award for I think best comedy. I forgot which show it was that year. I think it was either I think it was Cable Guy, I believe. And he comes out dressed like it's this hippie, and he's talking all this crazy stuff, saying like there's some pretty, you know what, tonight, he was just wild. That was that show I remember when I talked about Sam Jackson's birthday, where when Sam came after him because Sam was presenting an award. Sam said to say, Jim, Carrey, funny mother. Sam, bad mother, and he has quite several awards. Some Golden Globes, also a couple other comic awards. Just a string of awards he earned. And also a few years ago, him and the Living Color, uh, cast came together and they got an award at the TV Land Awards. This was like I think about 3-4 years ago, I believe, and it was a great honor for them to come together. This cast hadn't worked together in so long to get this award for this show, Living Color. And then he also does a lot of stand up. He's been on Saturday Night Live at least 4 times in his career since his first time in '96, 2011, 2014. He's recently been playing Joe Biden, doing Saturday Night Live. And his last time he played the year Joe Biden won as president. Loser! To Donald Trump. Are you Donald Trump's supposed loser? That is crazy. Him, he loves that. Remember, he's the loser in Ace Ventura. Loser. And he's been in quite a few relationships. He was married for quite some time. Him and his wife, they were married for a few years. I think from his first wife. I'm trying to remember her name. It's out here somewhere. And then he was in a relationship with Renee Zellweger when he did Meet Yourself Irene. He was married to Laura Holly for about after they did Dumber and Dumber. That was for a year, and he was in I think a good long-term relationship with Jenny McCarthy. I think they were together for like 5 or 6 years. But he's a father. He's a grandfather. He has a daughter, from his first wife, and she also has, he became a grandfather I think around about I think around about the early 2000s. And he's just one of these great guys. I'm a fan of Jim Carrey. I remember one time he told a story how when one of his sister Rita died. Well, no, his sister. I think it was his father. When his father died, he wrote a check to himself, and he took that check when he was in his father's funeral and put it in his pocket. And it was the biggest check he wrote to himself, and his biggest payday was when he got paid to play the Riddler in Batman Forever. And that was his biggest payday in his career, And I think he has great range about him. He also being that who he is, he also has some issues. I remember a while back there was a situation where his ex-girlfriend killed herself. He was starting to deal with depression, but he still keeps a smile on his face. And he's very political. I remember he picked on Clint Eastwood with that whole chair thing. He picked on the late Burt, not Burt, like cancer, Charleston Heston. Remember he did you get this gun out of my cold dead hand. And you picked on him. He's very political. He believes in what he believes in. You gotta respect him. He's a great actor, a legend, a comedian. He's just an activist. I mean, I'm a fan of him. I mean, I love Jim Carrey. He's just a great comic. I put him up there with guys like Robin Williams or you know, really those guys really are, or who else I'm trying to think of? Really guys who really do great personations and stuff like that. Robin Williams was pretty good. Um, mm, uh, I'm trying to think of somebody else. There's so many good ones. I mean, I can't think. Robin Williams is the only one I can't think of my head, but he's one of those guys. I mean, and maybe someday he has an Oscar nomination in his pocket. Maybe someday he'll win an Oscar. Just it has to be the right time and the right film. But like I said, today is his birthday. He's 60 years old. He still looks like he's Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, and I hope I'm gonna love to see that movie because I still remember the part where he found out that he kissed the man. That's so stupid. He got in the shower, chewing the gum. But this is why he was making such a great guy and great comedian. And like I said, I'm a fan of Jim Carrey, and I hope the best for him on his birthday. This is Man Always Yours page, aka. Sorry, cut the aka part. This is Man Always Yours page. Don't like, subscribe, don't subscribe. I'm out. Happy birthday, Jim.